All right. For those who still arrive during the meeting, I will just start already. So thanks again for joining the webinar. Today I will be talking about mostly Power BI adoption, the challenges related to releasing a data product and having end users adopt it and generate value from it. And how the Fabric adoption roadmap guidelines set by Microsoft can help you in chasing user adoption and value creation from your data products. Voilà, let me first introduce myself. So my name is Pieter. I'm an analytics analyst at element61 with just over 4 years of experience. Initially, I was more focused on the data modeling part of the data world, so spent quite some time in creating data models in an Azure environment, and gradually moved more and more into visualization, the part in Power BI or other BI tools. And what really interests me is the part where we involve end users and people from business, because ultimately, that's the end goal of a BI solution, to have people use your reports. And what I noticed throughout projects that I was working on is that sometimes often this step is the most challenging. And so in those last couple of years, I've been focusing on how we can facilitate the rollout of BI solutions and help people and support people in adopting a new technology. So that's me. I will go over some of the practicalities for this webinar. So throughout the presentation, you can ask questions in the Q&A panel or in the chat window, if I'm not mistaken. And afterwards, there will be a dedicated time slot after the presentation to ask your questions. So if you have questions, either put them in chat or ask them after the presentation. If you're experiencing issues throughout the presentation, best probably to leave and re-enter the webinar and hope that they are solved. And we will be recording this webinar and it will be shared after the session. So you will receive a link. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. The agenda for today, I will start by talking about the challenges of Power BI adoption, combined with a real-life example, something that I experienced on a project that I was working on, and how we overcome or try to tackle these challenges to involve users more and more in the reports that we were creating. I will explain what the Fabric adoption roadmap is and how it can help you to evaluate areas of improvement in your BI setup and helps you to act and create solutions that ultimately drive adoption. We will look into how you can use this theoretical framework, because in essence, it's guidelines from Microsoft, so it's quite theoretical, how you can use this in practice and how you can get started with using the adoption roadmap from Fabric on your own situations at your organization. And I will wrap up with how we can help you accelerate, because like I said, in the past year, not only me, but also colleagues of mine, we've been working hard and looking constantly into how we can support adoption of BI rollouts. So we also have a toolkit there to accelerate, and I will explain that at the end of the presentation. All right, let's get started with the challenges of Power BI adoption. And so what we see is that many organizations right now aim to become more data-driven. And so that journey to becoming more data-driven and invest in BI solutions usually starts quite small, with a POC that is focused, a proof of concept that is focused on a specific technology. It can be Power BI, can be another BI solution, or even machine learning. So it usually starts small. And after a while, it reaches a certain level of acceptance and it gets broadcasted to an audience, can be a small or a large audience. And that's when usually challenges start popping up. And because what we see is that you can't get users to adopt a solution just on a standalone technology. It requires more than a technology. It usually requires an organization being ready to support them to become data-driven, and there need to be processes to help them get value out of a product. It's not like you can just create a Power BI report, share a link in an email, and accept people to start using it in their day-to-day jobs. This is a process that takes time, and you need to invest efforts to get there. And so in essence, what we see is that if you want to advance adoption, you need to look at data culture. And data culture, like I said, is more than just technology features. You need to consider also people and processes that support these solutions that you're creating. And if you think about BI reporting and Power BI as an example, usually when we talk about people, we talk about a BI team, management, business, your end users. And when you look into processes, it can be something very straightforward, like having a tutorial to support people that never used Power BI before and train them in using this new tool. It can be a dictionary of all the definitions that you're using in your report and ways that you calculate certain measures. But these kind of perspectives are important to get the most out of the technology that you are creating. And so ultimately, what you're aiming for is to find areas of opportunity on these three pillars, people, process, and technology, and look for points of improvement and ways to do that to aim for a capable and efficient data culture that kind of is a platform for your end users to generate value out of the BI product. But this is not easy. It's a challenge. It's not like you can do it straight from this, from day one. It's an illusion that you can create a new Power BI report, and that from the moment that you go into production, you will have 100 daily users for the rest of its lifetime. It doesn't work like that. And so to illustrate the challenges of getting there, creating that data culture and becoming more data-driven, let's look at a real-life example that I faced working on a project over the past year, and just look at some of the challenges related to Power BI adoption. Voila. So in this example, it started about over 1.5 years ago as a small proof of concept. And so I came into this project. My main task in the beginning was to connect to some data sources that they had. It was actually just one or two because it's a small exercise to begin with within Azure. So we used Databricks as a warehouse. Created a data model, and based on that data model, we pushed data into a Power BI data set on which we created a first report. And it took us a while to get this report validated, but after a while, we exposed it to our end user base. And so what we then saw is that we went into production. People were using it for the first weeks, and we saw the views increase. And this is, by the way, something you can monitor within Power BI service. If you don't know, you can check the last 30 days of activities on your reports and data sets. But so we saw a spike in views right after the deployment, but after a week or two, this was declining already. And so we asked for feedback from our end users, and we got the feedback that, look, the content that you create, the tool itself, Power BI, is nice, it's dynamic, it's better than our current solution, but the content or the information that we can find in this report, it's not solving our business problems. We can't use it in our day-to-day jobs. It's not tailored enough. So that's one, which prevents the end users basically to adopt that new product. And second, throughout validation and afterwards when we received feedback, it also became clear that IT was a bottleneck for change requests. And so even the smallest of requests, it took us a while to process them because we were also working on other projects. And the slowness of that process also caused people to just stop using the tool and ultimately adoption to decline. So what did we decide to do? we decided that we needed to pivot, and we started involving data analysts in each division of this company. And so in this case, there were actually people in all the business units that had a data analysis background and were able to either already work in Power BI or with some training start working in Power BI. And what we did was we allowed them to create their own reports, but based on data sets that we create from our data warehouse. And so we split the data set creation from the report creation, and we set up workspaces for each business unit to start creating content. And the aim of our goal of doing this was that tackle the feedback that content was not tailored enough. We allow business users to create their own reports, and by default they know their business better than a shared service like IT. And so the goal there was to have content that was better suited to solve their day-to-day business problems. And so, like I said, to get there, we set up workspaces for each business users, and we separated the data sets from the reports and used a live connection to connect to the common data model. We invested heavily in object level security and row level security to make sure that the data that they were working on to create reports was actually data that they were allowed to see. We invested in training on best practices on how to work with Power BI for those who didn't have that much experience, and allow them to get the most out of the report building in Power BI. At one point, we created Teams channel so we could communicate, because now it's not one party anymore, but it's two parties. It's the BI team and business key users that are involved. So whenever something needed to be communicated, there had to be a channel for that. And we also invested in a data catalog, because people are now building reports on a data set published by IT, but they often don't know what data is in there, which tables can I find, which columns are in this table. So at one point we needed to share this information so that they knew what they can get out of the data model that was live. And so you see what we did is we pivoted, we changed, and the way we were working in that proof of concept with the aim of increasing adoption. But this implicated that we needed to do a lot of small changes, and the ones you see at the bottom of this slide. And at some point, we reached a platform where those people were constantly creating new reports, and they were producing it faster than ever. But then a new issue popped up. A new challenge. We outsourced the report building to business, to key users within each business unit, and they got flexibility to create measures in Power BI as they were. And what we noticed was that central definitions and some key concepts were starting to deviate. So person A could create a measure in one report that was exactly the same measure name, at least, as what person B created in another report, but the way of calculating it was different. And so what end users noticed is that the same KPI in one report would result in a different figure compared to another report. And so this caused distrust. People were asking questions, why is this deviating? And you can already imagine it's not good for adoption of a tool, and because if people don't trust the content or the data that they're seeing, they won't use it in their day-to-day lives. So again, we were looking into ways to improve here, and what we decided is that all content in production, so by default, only content in production could be consumed by end users, and all this content needed to be certified. And certified content for us meant that measures reside in the central data set, and those that are shared by several business units, that the definition there is agreed upon by all parties that are involved. And so to agree on this definition, we organized a meeting, a platform on regular intervals, where the key users from business were present, where people from the BI team were present, and where domain experts, often management, also was invited to. And so the goal of this meeting was to align on central concepts and definitions to make sure that the reporting base was stable and those concepts were shared and clear for everyone. And so we captured all this information, those central definitions and key concepts, and decided on which way to go. But we also shared it back to the end user for them to understand better what they were looking at. Because now that we decided how something would be calculated or what, for example, a client is, we could bundle it in a business glossary, attach it to our reports in Power BI so that people kind of have it as a definition list to just understand the data and what they're seeing better. And so again, you see, we had an area of improvement. We found some ways to improve it by organizing a meeting, certification of content, creating a business glossary, all with the aim to gain more momentum and start creating better content. And that's kind of what I'm going to with this example. What I really wanted to show is that a Power BI report, it's a living product. It's not something you can create perfectly from day one and then share to your end users. You need to treat it as a living product and continuously iterate over it. And what you want to do is evaluate where you are at the moment, find solutions to improve and to become better and create more value from your product, and then measure how well you are doing and if your efforts are actually paying off. And it sounds easy, but the question really is, where do you start? How do you know where your pain points are or your areas of improvement, which solutions might help you to overcome them, and how well it's actually working? And that's where we get into the Fabric adoption roadmap, because there is not one solution to this question, otherwise it wouldn't be a tough one. There's multiple ways, and it's really depending on your organization, your situation, and your way of working. And so Microsoft also saw this, and based on their experience with multiple customers and projects that they are working on, they bundled what they saw into a set of guidelines called the Fabric Roadmap to Adoption. And this guidelines is basically a series of strategic and tactical action points that can help you or that lead to a successful adoption, with the goal of building a data culture, becoming more data-driven. And so, like I said, the end goal is to stimulate end-user adoption by having that data culture. And that's also the goal of the roadmap and of the set of guidelines that you will find in there. And user adoption is that, or can be defined as users knowing where to find data assets and being aware that they exist and that they can help them in their day-to-day jobs, that the data reports or the Power BI reports that they are consuming enable them to solve business problems, and that they can interpret them, that they understand the data and can take action from it and generate value. And we also discussed earlier that solutions, what you see on the right, is not enough. You also need processes and organizational adoption to support these solutions and to trigger people to use them. And the roadmap defines exactly that, 9 key areas of potential improvement. Some process-based on how you can support adoption, others really looking at how you create your solution and tailor it to your end user audience. But basically, it exists out of 9 key areas with tips, tricks, guidelines, questions to ask yourself, considerations to take to increase adoption. And the 9 areas are executive sponsorship, center of excellence, mentoring and enablement, user support, community of practice, governance, system oversight, and then on the right, content ownership and content delivery scope. I won't go into detail right now because it will take us long, but I will focus on what you can find first in each of these areas. Because in essence, each area will help you to evaluate your current situation and identify areas of improvement. It will help you to find solutions and to check how well you are doing when you implement the change. And so that first one, that evaluation of your as-is situation, is done by posing a list, or you can find in each of these areas a list of questions to ask yourself to see where you are and what your potential pain points are. And so if you open the roadmap after this webinar, you will see that each section or each area has that question section, questions to ask yourself. And by looking into that, this might trigger you into thinking, okay, look, on this topic and on this topic, I can improve and I can potentially create better experiences for my end users and create more value. So it's a handy tool to think out of the box and to explore opportunities that you didn't think of before. Each area or each page in this roadmap also includes suggestions on how to improve. So how you can trigger change management and make your current solution better. And not only a suggestion on how to improve a process, but also which roles and responsibilities need to be assigned to certain people to make sure that this change management actually works, and supporting processes that can also help you implementing this change management. So there you can find tips, tricks, and guidelines on how to implement such a solution. And then ultimately, each of these areas is measured in maturity, or you can measure your maturity by looking at maturity levels. And by doing so, you can kind of benchmark your as-is situation to your desired future state and see where you can improve and where you want to invest time in to create a better adoption of users. And so I already warned you, this adoption roadmap, what I just explained, it's quite theoretical, but actually it's a handy starting point to use in practice when you're facing the challenges of getting users to actually use your data products. And so to illustrate that, let's look at the example I talked about earlier and see how we used, in this case, the roadmap to become better and better and create a good end product. And so remember, I talked about that proof of concept that we started with, where the BI team created both the data model and also that initial report. We sent it, or we broadcasted it to end users, and we got immediate feedback that the content was not tailored enough. Well, there is a section in the roadmap dedicated to content ownership, where guidelines are explained on, given your situation, who should own the data, who should own the report, and in what way can you set this environment up so that it works efficiently. So that is something, what we implemented, those 4 or 5 small changes, you can literally find in this roadmap as a suggestion. We also talked about the second issue that we faced, the definitions deviating from each other and central concepts not being the same in different business units. And in response, we created that meeting where both management, the BI team, and business were present to discuss on this. Well, in the roadmap, this is called a center of excellence. And you will find in that area or in that page guidelines on which actions they can take, which responsibilities they have, just to facilitate and create a process that supports end user adoption. And so just to illustrate that, there's a lot of content in there. It's quite a dense roadmap. But I will focus now on just one. So that first action that we took, where we looked at, let's go to the next slide. That issue or that feedback that we received on content not being tailored enough. How can we now actually, or how did we actually use this roadmap to become better and to improve the offering that we were giving to the end users? And so when we look at the first step, because it always starts with an evaluation, where are we now? It became clear in this case through feedback that we needed to rethink the content ownership strategy. But in retrospect, if you would use the roadmap and look into those questions that we talked about earlier, and if you answer them, you could come to the same conclusion, because there's questions in there like, okay, do business users consider a central team as restricting to work with data? Yes or no? And if you go through the sections in these in that content ownership page, you will come to the conclusion that, okay, maybe the as this situation where the central team controls both the data and the reports is not the ideal setup for this project. And if you look further in the area of the roadmap, you notice that there's multiple potential strategies that are mentioned. You had on the left side a business-led self-service, where data and reports are owned by business units themselves, and so completely decentralized. Each business unit owns the data and owns their own reports. And on the right side, you see an enterprise BI setup, where everything is centralized by one team. And so you know that at that point in the example that I explained, we were in the as this situation where the BI team controlled everything. It was an enterprise BI setup. Based on the feedback, we knew, okay, a hybrid solution might have been better, because we are working with one data source that multiple business units will consume. So it makes sense to still centralize the building of a data model. But we are, as IT or the BI team, too far away from the day-to-day life of business users. So to tailor content better to their business problems, let's decentralize the report creation and allow business units to do that themselves. And so by looking in that roadmap, we actually found that, okay, we want to shift from the as is situation being an enterprise BI setup to a managed self-service, a hybrid solution where data and reports are owned by different personas. And in the roadmap, it's also explained when certain strategies are more suitable. And that's what you see here in that screenshot. A managed self-service is most suitable when, and you see marked there, report creators need to produce analytical content at a pace faster than the central team can accommodate. And remember, that was also one of the feedbacks that we received, that IT couldn't process change requests fast enough. And so it's not, the roadmap will not really tell you what to do, but based on what you read in there, it might inspire you to trigger some changes like it did here in our case. And given that we then decided, okay, we will shift the responsibility of report creation to the business, we were looking into how can we make this work? Because again, in theory, this sounds easy, but what guidelines are there supporting roles, responsibilities, and processes to make this change work? And there also you can get inspired by what you see in that roadmap, because it has a section full of guidelines. And you see there, the first picture explains the separation of a data model versus a report. And that was literally one of the things that we implemented. So the usage of a live connection from report to a semantic model to allow that separation of duties. Also, a list of potentially interesting roles and responsibilities that you can assign to certain people to facilitate this process. And on top of that, there is always, for these strategies, a full way of working. I won't go into detail of this flowchart, but if you want to understand how you can make managed self-service BI work, there is a full explanation of the roles, the responsibilities, the processes that you need to create to transition towards such a way of working. And so this really helped us in the case of the example that I'm talking about, to craft those small changes and to become better and better and create a valuable end product. And so this content can be found in that Microsoft documentation and is really helpful and can inspire you to continuously improve. So at that point, we leveraged the roadmap to find a solution to our opportunity of improvement. And what we really wanted to go to was become more mature, become more data-driven, and move from an initial phase to a defined maturity. And that was the end result of that step. And we also saw that after the implementation, reports were being created faster than ever. More reports in production, the view count increased, but then a new challenge popped up. which is normal because, like I said, it's an iterative process. It's continuously that you need to improve because Power BI reports are living products. Voilà. I focus now quite deeply on one topic, being content ownership. There's 8 other areas in that roadmap. And what I will briefly do is go through all of them quite fast, but just so that you have a broader understanding of the content that you can find in there and that can help you inspire and trigger change in your organization. And so the first one that you see here on the top left, it's called executive sponsorship. And basically an executive sponsor is someone with credibility or influence in your organization that can be an advocate for building a data culture. So imagine a senior person that is triggered by being data driven and that encourages people and users to start using this solution. And in that section, you can find guidelines on how an executive sponsor can be selected, what they can do to encourage people to start using it, and tips and tricks on how to set this up. Second, the Center of Excellence. We briefly touched upon it, but in essence, it's an internal team of technical and business experts that assist people who are working with data. And remember, in that example we talked about earlier, we at one point created that meeting with management, business, and IT to discuss on central topics and to create a data dictionary for end users. Well, that's typically something that a Center of Excellence does. It's a platform for the people that are involved in the BI setup to discuss and to find ways to assist the end users. And again, in this section, you find guidelines on how to set this up, which profiles need to be in this Center of Excellence in an ideal scenario, and what kind of actions they can take just to increase adoption. Thirdly, we have mentoring and user enablement, and that's basically one of the objectives of the Center of Excellence. It's to enable users to accomplish as much as they can with the data products. And here you will find suggestions, for example, like, okay, is there a tutorial environment for end users to explore the capabilities or the functionalities of Power BI? Because sometimes you have an end user that never used it before. So is there something to train them? Are there processes to support this transition to a new tool? And these guidelines you can find in this area, and much more than that. User support. This is processes that are formally or informally organized to resolve issues or questions. And it can be as easy as having your contact details on the top of your Power BI report. It can also be certain Teams channels or shared mailboxes to which people can ask questions in case they have an issue. So that support processes also something to be organized when you are aiming to increase user experience and adoption, and you can find guidelines. Community of practice is, and I think this is a more advanced one, but at one point, if you are on your journey for being data-driven, I think if you have something like a Teams channel, for example, where people that are consuming the report can talk to each other and help each other to understand the data they are seeing, this is also something that is really valuable in the journey to adoption. And so here you will find ways to bring people that are using and consuming data together to influence each other and help each other in consuming it. Governance won't go too deep in that, but you can imagine that all the policies and procedures that you define from a governance perspective influence adoption. Can be security, can be other ways, but basically these are guidelines in which the organization wants you or wants data to be used. Last one from this page is system oversight, and so here it's all kind of guidelines on administrative responsibilities and support of internal processes, tools, and people. For example, how to communicate when a data refresh failed, and making sure that people know upfront that the data this morning is not 100% correct, etc. all important processes to increase the trust that people have in your data products. Content ownership we already covered, so I will not explain it again. The last one is the content delivery scope. And this concerns the strategies that you can have on delivering content to your end user. And so basically you have 4 strategies. It's personal BI, team BI, departmental BI, or enterprise BI. And it depends on how large your audience is. Are you creating a report for a team, for a full department, for the entire organization, or just for one person? Given that you are given the scope or the size of your audience, the way you deliver your report can differ. It can be via an app with audiences, or if it's just for one person, it's maybe sufficient to just send them the link and you don't have to create an app. And so guidelines on that you can find in this section. Right, so this was, again, a bit more theoretical. You might ask yourself at this point, okay, how can I use this and how can I get started with this roadmap to tackle the challenges that I'm facing at my organization? And so what I would suggest is that if you are looking for more adoption of your data products, start by looking into those 9 key areas and go through the questions and assess for yourself your current state and where you want to go to, your desired future state. And if you do that exercise and go through each of these pillars, you will also find in there potential solutions on how to get there to your desired future state. And if you get through that list of all those potential actions that you can take, it becomes a matter of planning. And then you can focus on low-hanging fruit, on small changes that you can quickly implement to increase the end-user experience. But remember, the life of a data product of your Power BI report, it's continuous improvement. It's a living product. So once you do that as this evaluation, it's just a matter of planning and implementing it at regular intervals. It's also not that you have to do a one-off evaluation. You have your list and then you work through it and that's the end. It doesn't work like that. You revisit it and you re-evaluate continuously and steer where necessary, taking in mind all the tips and tricks and guidelines you can find in that roadmap and the supporting processes, roles, and responsibilities that can help you trigger that change. And so that was how we got started in that example that I explained you, and that's how I think you can get value out of that roadmap by doing that analysis of where you are and where you want to go to. Now, maybe this sounds easy, but it's in reality a tough exercise because, again, adoption, it's not easy to get there and to get that change management working. And this is something that we also focus on. And what we did to help you accelerate is we built a tool on top of the principles of increasing adoption, just to help you do that evaluation, that acting, and that measuring, that continuously iterating and improving your data products. And so what we did is to help you define your to-be situation, we created a questionnaire based on the roadmap to assess your current data culture and your technological setup. And we also host interviews with all the stakeholders, all the personas, the groups of people that are involved to understand where the opportunities for improvement are. We look into ways to solve this and to tackle these challenges and define a clear roadmap and plan ahead when we can implement certain changes and which supporting processes need to be in place to facilitate those changes, which is kind of exactly what we discussed in how you could use the roadmap in your day-to-day life. But we go even further because changing and implementing a new way of working is one thing, but the real power is being able to monitor how this change is actually going. if it's working, if it's not working, do I need to steer some more, adjust even more to get it working? And because this compass is not always there for you when you do a change, we invested time in creating a tool. It's a Power BI report for you to get the insights that you need and to know and to monitor the effects of the actions that you are taking. And this is an acceleration kit that we developed, and it contains 2 reports. On the top, you see a report where you're able to view very granular statistics on your reports and your apps that you have in Power BI and on the views and activities that happen in them. And so here you can really monitor who is checking which report, what activities are they doing, and kind of see adoption on a very granular report-based level over time. Remember, you can also see this straight in Power BI service, but only for the last 30 days. And so what we built is here a report that is able to look way further and see the trends in adoption and identify pain points or challenges when they occur. But so that's very very detailed data. But since we are talking about conceptual change management and increasing adoption, this is more high level. We also created a report to look into those changes that we are implementing and create KPIs on top of them to monitor how well we are doing. And as an example, remember that I talked about one of the changes that we implemented at the project or the example earlier was that production content had to be certified. And so only reports that were built on top of certified datasets could go to production and could be consumed by end users. That was a decision that we took. But how did we know that this was actually working? Because you can do that change and you can tell people, okay, you can only deploy to production when it's certified. But how do you actually know that this works and this has an effect? So what we did was we created some KPIs to measure it. And this is quite basic still. But by defining it and displaying it into a report, you could see how many certified datasets there were at that point, how many of them were promoted, and how many reports were, for example, built on top of uncertified datasets, which is something you want to avoid. And because we just changed towards a system where reports in production had to be built on top of certified datasets. So those 903 uncertified, those are potential issues that we need to look into and contact the owner from. And then at the bottom, you see, for example, some KPIs on the number of views built on top of uncertified, the number of views of end users on reports built on top of uncertified content. And so you see 1,000 views. And so this is something that we wouldn't allow traditionally. And so what we try to build here with this acceleration kit is a way to make the theoretical guidelines and change management, which is very strategical and tactical, measurable in Power BI so that you can really see and use your own data to monitor and to steer adoption. And so by using this report, it makes it more tangible. You're looking back at data and seeing how well your decisions and your changes are actually being executed and what the effects of it are. And so that wraps it up almost. So for me, what I wanted you to take away from this webinar is that you understand that a Power BI report is something that is living. You have to continuously improve it. And given that this is a key challenge to have people adopt your Power BI content, and you don't always know where to start and how to improve it, know that you can use this Fabric adoption roadmap to evaluate your current situation, to identify improvements, implement solutions, and then measure your impact. And so if you're interested in more, feel free to reach out and we can discuss further. And if you're interested in that kit to monitor it, also again, feel free to send an email. Voila. That wraps up the presentation. I don't know if there's any questions from your side? All right. If there's any questions in the next coming days, if you're able to open the roadmap after this meeting and you see something that you want to talk about, again, don't hesitate to send an email. Happy to discuss and look into how we can increase adoption at your site. Okay, thanks for attending, and yeah, hope to hear you again.